the things that are going on all the levels, political, technological, secret society operations, black operations, are leaked to us in the movies. I don't really have a complete understanding of why they choose fictional means. I mean, you know, the jury's out. All I know is that they do it. I say that in my work I'm always emphasizing that light both conceals as much as it reveals. And I'm kind of shocked that, you know, people haven't noticed this simple dynamic. Light conceals as much as reveals. Could it be then that the Illuminati are using light because, for the same reason as a policeman, when he shines light in your face, he's blinding you? That light has this principle to also blind you? There isn't just one psychopathic super criminal at the top, which, you know, is about as ludicrous as saying that there's a lone assassin, you know, was involved in the JFK murder. No, no, no. There's a bloodline. There's a generational thing going on here. There's a dragon court in operation, and they use the dragon symbol and they use the serpent symbol. It's right there in your face because that's their logo. Why should they not use it? You know, a football team uses their logo, the police use their logo, the religions use their logo, the medical profession uses their logo, so does the dragon court. Well, the bloodline question is fundamental again, and the symbols of the bloodline, one of the most important symbols of the bloodline, can be seen and is seen by thousands of tourists in the front of Buckingham Palace. It's the red lion and the white unicorn. The reason for bloodline is simply this: the atnists were always few, and you can't run the world with just a few people, no matter how evil you are. So you have to have a administrative body. You must have lackeys. You must have minions. You must have lieutenants. When it comes to the theme of mind control or even mass control, and it's, you know, it's mechanics, it's almost hard to find examples because it's all that. It's ubiquitous. Almost every word that's used, you know, not only the portrayal of certain archetypes, animals, women, men, races, but even the use of certain talismanic words, you know, and I'm including faster, bigger, better, greater, you know, younger, healthier, you know, all sorts of talismanic words, and I used to teach children this, to observe this, you know, waking them up to the fact that these terms are being used a lot in the media. But again, seeking for examples, it's every second. It's not one example, it's multiple. There's a whole barrage of this, you know, coming out of Hollywood, coming out of Madison Avenue. What's happening in the mainstream is that idea that I represent you, Jon Stewart represents you, X represents you, is a Pied Piper concept. Does he really represent you? Do you want such a person to represent you? And if you do, then is he not completely now in control of your allegiances and your affiliations, you see? And they can steer them in a very much Pied Piper way, wherever they want to go, sometimes this way, sometimes that way, like those cops you used to see at the corner or in the center of streets with the white armbands. This is the road they don't want you to go down, but this is the route they do want you to take. And so through this particular mechanism, and I do see it in shows very much like The Daily Show, and also in the more pernicious types like the Bill O'Reilly, you know, syndrome. But people need to become very observant of this. Glenn Beck, not that these people don't have important and brilliant things to say, and after all, they're journalists. They collate and summate, and it's good to poke fun, you know, and be the court jester, but you're still in the court. You're still serving the boss. Well, the question of fear is very important. In fact, it might even be fundamental, because as Frank Herbert, the author, said, fear is the mind killer. And so the constant rug pulling, economically, socially, military, you know, is a key part of all of this. Coming from a psychological background, I always distinguish fear from anxiety. I think it's important because fear ultimately is something external. You're afraid of things that are external. You're anxious about something internal. So yes, there's the certain architecture of fear and the installation and influx of fear on the external level. You know, oh my goodness, the economy, oh my goodness, you know, strange enemies at the gates, oh my God, towers are burning, etc., etc., etc. My focus is much more on what is the concomitant of that within the psyche. And when you get into the question of anxiety, you then are really, you know, following an important thread there, because the anxiety question is age-old again. You're going back to a very long time, you know, before this era, before the 20th century, into how anxiety, a person has been kept in perpetual anxiety. Of course, people in the lower class will say, well, there's nothing more anxiety than not being able to, make your own ends meet, and not being able to feed your kids, and potentially having to go off and die in foreign wars, etc., etc., etc. But more specifically, anxiety is what you're doing to yourself. Anxiety is based on your relationship between you and your own psyche. They take an already fragmented, already traumatized, already insecure person and barrage him again and again and again until his entire thinking is shut down. What happens is that his concept of time becomes traumatized, fragmented, disabled. He's anxious about the future, he's forgetful about the past. What also happens is that his brain is overstimulated now. What happens now, he's overstressed physically, his body breaks down. In other words, his immunity on a total, again, we've talked about the war of consciousness, or I've talked about the war of consciousness in my work. This is what it's all about. We're getting to the heart of the matter here. Once this immunity wholesale is lower, then you have the perfect slave, and he can be led towards a global village, or he can be led into complete servitude. In fact, he can even be led to die, in a completely willful state. He can willfully go to die for your causes. I believe, you see, that the so-called Dark Brotherhood, the Illuminati, and so forth and so on, are not as much a problem as the members of our own community, so-called, who can't get into focus, who continually are fighting, who continually trying to separate and fragment and accuse and debunk and all of these kinds of things. I think we have to clean up our own house first, before we can even take on the common enemy. The common enemy knows this, so they continually perpetuate the agent provocateur, fifth columnist agenda to make sure that we can't get our bows and arrows together, and we can't even find, it's like the Three Stooges running around here. Kingship is the coming together of all the knights, coming together of all the voices. It's a symposium, because no one person is ever going to have the right idea. Remember, one single leader can either be corrupted or threatened or compromised as well. So it's actually a vulnerable thing to have a single leader, because that's no threat whatsoever to the members of the Black Lodge at all.